And we are live. Good afternoon, Angela. How are you doing today?
I am doing amazing. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, thanks. Yeah, doing great. Had a productive work day today, so yeah, I'm just excited and ready to get into this discussion.
As they say, let's get into it.
Indeed, indeed. Today we are talking about part two of the DevOps Handbook. Specifically, the title of this section is, as I flip to, I'm on my phone today. I've been going back and forth between the book to my Kindle. Can't find either of them at the moment, so I'm on my phone today. But this is part two, where to start, with an emphasis on value streams.
Yes, indeed.
Um,
This part two, in the introduction, it tells you that there are certain behaviors, certain activities that you should uh, take on if you are considering a DevOps transformation in your organization. And I'll just read a few, but
yeah.
selecting which value stream to start, right? You want to know what value can you bring with DevOps in your organization and understanding the work being done. So you have to understand the process. What is the current process? How does this look in the new
Mhm.
process? Um, Designing your organizations and architecture with Conway's law in mind. I'd never heard of that law before. I'm sure we'll probably touch upon it. Enabling market oriented outcomes and protecting and enabling teams, which is a huge part of it because DevOps is not a tool, it is not a product, it is about a culture. And how
Mhm.
do you make culture? It's with people. So so that's what this section is about. And what do you think about selecting which value stream to start with? I'm sure you've been through a few transformations. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I have indeed. And this spoke to me in a way that most of the value stream selection that I've had to do in terms of DevOps processes and procedures is legacy modernization, or like modernizing legacy processes. Um, and I actually enjoy that, to be honest. I like working with old tech because I appreciate seeing what people thought was cool, or like cutting edge technology when they developed it. I mean, it's a lot of times it's pretty good. Sometimes it's kind of bad, right? Which comes to the point of modernization, where we have to take that legacy process, tool, code, deployment procedure, whatever it is,
Mhm.
and bring it up to standard for the new cutting edge, the new whatever it is, the new hotness that we're using. So the benefit that I find personally in those value stream selections is coming from a background where I worked with mainframes, where I work with like large systems and data centers or whatever, and knowing the technologies in those places, but then also taking the time to learn the new technologies and then bridging the two. Um,
Mm.
that's, to me, that's just like the pinnacle of engineering DevOps
It
fun.
is.
Yeah.
Really is. It sounds like you've cut your teeth on many a brownfield project and has have brought it into the modern age. So
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So pick wisely. That's what we found out. We There's a case study about Nordstrom and how they had to pick a value stream in order
Hmm.
to help modernize, and um, they needed to make more money. They needed to improve
Yeah.
their online business, so they took one particular value stream, worked on it diligently, had some wins, and was able to move on to another. And in that case study, it was mentioned that at some point you have to make sure you bring everything along, because are you really
Hmm.
modernizing or moving forward if you have some laggards? So that was interesting. I mentioned this stat last week where 60% of DevOps transformation are brownfield, and they're
Yes.
riddled with technical debt and no test environment. Like this is where it starts,
Yeah.
and then it turns into a modernized operation, CI/CD testing, test environments, pushing to different prod stage, whatever. It all has to start somewhere, right?
Yeah. And Yeah, and
Identifying the
just
value stream is definitely what this chapter is honing in on.
sure. And let me just comment on the terms brownfield and greenfield as we
Yes.
introduce them. Brownfield being a project that's ongoing or it's already in place, systems and processes and people, they already know what's going on. And they may be entrenched in these places, with whatever is there. Brownfield and greenfield come from environmental terms. I think it explained in the book,
Hmm.
where brownfield is where, something may have already been before, and to improve upon it, you have to like take care of all this old stuff to get to the new stuff. Whereas a green field, if you can imagine just this green prairie, this like literally a green field where you can
Yep.
build whatever you want because there's nothing there. It's just totally, totally perfect. But then I feel like you run into problems with people in both of those places. And I'll just share and be brief.
Oh,
Brownfield, yeah, like I
absolutely.
said, yeah, people are entrenched.
Hmm.
They're used to what they're working with. But sometimes in a greenfield, we have a greenfield opportunity. People don't know or don't realize that it is a greenfield opportunity. You have to bring it to their attention to say, like, hey, this is an opportunity for us to actually do something different. Look at
Yeah.
all this other technology that we could be using if there's something an opportunity for it. Now, I'm not saying using new tech for the sake of using new tech. I'm saying there comes an inflection point in the project or the team or whatever the case is, where you can experiment. When we talked about experiment last time, where you can work with some new technology that may add value to the work that the team is doing. I have to keep both of those in mind. Brownfield, greenfield, you still have to evangelize to get people on board.
So somewhere in our readings, it mentioned that people bring their, I don't think they call them biases, but we
Yeah,
bring those bad practices, we
yeah,
bring that mindset in even into greenfield projects. So we know
yeah.
this is an opportunity to do things different, but we've been doing it this way all along. So sometimes we can't think outside of the box. It's
Yes.
always good, and I don't want to jump ahead, but where it says creating a separate team that can have the space to innovate and experiment. And when you're building a team, it is not just a team of developers. Like,
Hmm.
gone are the days where every team is, oh, it's a, there's a again, there's a term for it. There's a term for everything, I come to
Yeah.
find out. But there's a term for when you have a team and it's just network engineers or storage engineers or
Hmm.
server engineers, and there's a name for it. I'm sure I'll come across it in my notes and or bookmarks. And that is not the best way to build a
Yeah.
team. To build a team, they're saying, oh, functional, matrix, and market oriented. So
Yes.
functional is
Yes.
when you're building teams around a function. Oh, we're the developers. Oh, we're the network. Oh, and then you have a matrix where, sometimes one person is on two different teams, and that's just another
Hmm.
level of complexity that you're adding. And then there's something called market oriented, where your market or your product is what builds your team. So you make sure you have all the resources that you need to bring that product to market. So you have network, you have ops, you have dev, you have marketing, you have everybody you need right here in this little bundle, where you don't have to reach outside
Hmm.
because all the expertise you need is right there. So gone are the tickets to this team and waiting for approvals and things like that. So that is a huge part of being able to transform from the way that we were doing things to this new way of doing things. So um, yeah.
Yeah. And I have worked in every single one of those types of organizations. And I mean, they have their pros and their cons depending on the product or the team or the company or whatever the case is. Um, and I think about startups. If you're on a startup and it's market oriented, and you almost can't be any of the other ones in a startup because
Nope.
everybody's like hitting the ground running. It's like all hands on deck, So it doesn't matter what the problem is, you're going to lean on whoever you need to get that problem solved in a startup environment.
That's
That's
right.
great.
You need
Yeah.
almost need a startup mindset, right?
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Um,
What
yeah.
else do we want to talk about? I want to talk about, so Have you ever been on a team where, you're going through this transformation and a dedicated transformation team was built? Have you ever been on a team like that?
Um, yes, and well, I guess the short answer is yes, right?
Mhm.
But it was almost like change management. And so I even think about like a presentation that I did years ago on modernizing legacy systems. And really the basis of that presentation was change management. But they
Mhm.
hit on a lot of the points from change management in these chapters, particularly starting out small and not trying to, or I guess avoiding the big bang approach was the terminology that they use. So starting off small, and I will also add to that building partnerships so that you're working with the people that are already interested in going
Mhm.
forward.
That is
So
mentioned
you
in the book about
yes,
building transformational teams. That is integral. We want
exactly.
people who are already on board, who are
Yep.
already excited about the possibilities. You want people on the team who have a long-standing relationship with people outside the team, so
Yeah.
they can be advocates and cheerleaders for this new process. You need people who are generalists. You want to be able to speak the language of everybody on your team. So um, yeah, that having the team that has all of the pieces needed, it seems like I don't think everybody has that luxury. Like
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
talking about, most smaller organizations, you don't really have that luxury. But the ideal, even if you had that mindset, like, okay, we're this transformation team and we may be answering to masters for a while, but we have the backing of the CEO or whomever, and they're giving
Yep.
us this runway in order to help bring this transformation along. And you can't really do it without that level of support from the team members who were passionate, and then of course the
Mhm.
people up above. You definitely need that
Yeah.
support.
And so that's why I really kind of lean into building those partnerships and sharing small wins, because those people that are your partners, they are going to talk about those wins in spaces that you're not even in. And so if there's somebody that you're trying to convince, as you go even further into this project where you're trying to modernize more parts of the system or whatever the case is, they are going to be talking to those people that are holding you back in different channels and different
Yeah.
spaces. And so then when you bring up your point again, their mind may shift a little bit. They might, like I heard, Jim over in accounting, he said that we should probably do this thing. So you know what? Let's give it a shot.
Mm.
And Jim was on your team from the get-go. So that's just one way to kind of work with those partnerships so that you can expand your transformation a little bit faster.
Exactly. Awesome. Um, I'm gonna make a mention of something that I saw in chapter 6. Any type of transformation, you have to leave a little bit of capacity for the what ifs. And it says,
True.
reserve 20% of capacity for non functional requirements and reducing technical debt. And I did an episode on technical debt on compiler, and it's a great
Hmm.
episode. You should listen to it. But
I
what it
already
says
have.
here that I know you have, I'm talking to the people who are listening to this stream.
Oh, my bad. Yes.
Make sure you check out the episode of on technical debt on compiler. But what it says here is most organizations really struggle with that, right? And it's likening it to a financial debt where you are in
Mhm.
such debt that you're literally only making interest payments. You're swimming along, you're
Mhm.
not making any progress. So, daily workarounds and band-aids. There's no innovation happening there. So, you have to leave um room and space for people to kind of come back and clean things up as you go. Like
Mhm.
you can't fill 100% of your time with something and not acknowledge the fact that yeah, there's probably legacy here, technical debt here. We want to make sure that we bring it along with us at some point. But
Mhm.
I thought that I really wanted to mention that because the analogy is very spot on. If you don't pay it down, you're digging yourself a hole.
Yeah.
That was in chapter 6. And what do you think about that? You listened to the episode, and there was a case study in chapter 6 about LinkedIn and
Yeah.
how you mentioned it when we very first started talking. When you were talking about um, you know connecting, two different pieces of, technology and
Mhm.
things like that. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but that case study on LinkedIn talked a little bit about it as well. Do you want to talk about that LinkedIn case study? And there's one part in there that I hope you bring up because we
Well,
want.
that's I'm trying. I may be confusing it with the Nordstrom or the American Airlines case study.
Okay.
Because one thing that we did mention as we were preparing for this episode, those case studies were long. So if there was a part in the LinkedIn case study that you're referring to, you might want to just go ahead and
I'm
drop
gonna
it.
just go ahead and do what I do. Okay. So,
Now,
um,
before you do, I will say honestly, that was a beautiful tee up. Thank you so much for pitching it underhand for me, and I apologize for swinging and missing.
oh no, that's, hey, we fam, it's all good. It's all
Yeah.
good. But in the LinkedIn case study, they had this service called, I can't remember the name of it, but it was this service that sat between the PHP and
Oh,
the
Sprouter.
Sprouter. Yes, it was
Yes. Okay. I'm
stored
remembering now.
procedure or
Yes.
something, right?
Yes. It was, yeah, the stored procedure router.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they were encumbered every time they tried to make a change, they would have an outage. This was way back when, oh my God, we're on LinkedIn. How about that? How meta is that? It was after their IPO. And they had to get over this huge amount of technical debt. And what they decided right after their IPO was, you know what? Whole house freeze. We are putting all new development work on hold for 2 months until we solve this
Mhm.
huge mound of technical debt. So, when you are freeing up those cycles, those mental cycles, those actual cycles of people always chasing and really saying, wait, come on back. Let's figure this out. No more feature development. We're gonna have to fix this problem. And once they did, it was all the rage. Like,
Yeah.
it was probably one of the better business decisions they made right after the IPO. And I don't know if most organizations would be so bold to say,
Mhm.
nah, we're gonna stop right here.
Yeah.
I've never known of one other than reading this. Have you ever experienced that
Not that I
before?
could think of,
Mm-mm.
like not stopping all feature development. I mean, and it may be the case where, maybe some portion, again, if you're talking about an enterprise where there are
Yes.
multiple teams, multiple products, maybe one product or service or system can slow down the feature development to fix a problem. But yeah, like pulling that assembly line chain and saying, no,
Yes.
everybody stop what you're doing and hop onto this problem. Let's resolve it. Let's get it done. Yeah, it's that's I have not heard of a situation like that in my experience. Yeah.
Well, good job by them. Good job by
Yeah.
them. So,
No
chapter
doubt.
talking about chapter 5, talk so chapter 5 was uh identifying the value streams. Chapter
Mhm.
6 was mapping the value streams, understanding where the work is, understanding the where the value is, all the different pieces, how they work together. And then once you understand that, like, there's user visible and user invisible things that you need to work on in any type of transformation. And the stuff that usually gets the attention is the stuff that your users see. It's the
Mhm.
new hotness, but there's so much stuff that's invisible that really weighs on any transformation, any PI, any new iteration. Like, and if you're not paying it forward, you're going to be walking in the backwards. So
Yeah.
that was chapter 1, identifying the teams, building the team around the transformation. And then we go to chapter 7, where it
Mm.
talks about Conway's Law that I had never
Yeah.
before.
I had heard of Conway's Law before, and I appreciated their sort of definition of it and their explanation of it, and basically saying that organizations that design systems are constrained to produce designs which are copies of the communication structures of the organization. And I mean, going back to the example that they gave, if you have like two teams, one team has, I think the example they gave, one team has 3 people, another team has 2 people, then
Mhm.
that system designed by the 3 people is going to have 3 stages or 3 parts to it,
Yep.
because you got 3 different people talking to each other. And the other one is going to have like 2 parts of it. And they went even deeper into an example talking about, and I think it kind of tied to that Sprouter example where you have the developers and the database team, and there was no way for the developers to self-service. They
Mhm.
had to go through the database team to make their changes. So you have these two parts of organization, just n equals two for Conway, and so their system has n equal two parts: the code part of it and the database part of it. Any change got to go through both parts. But
Exactly.
if you want to move quickly, you have to enable people to, if possible, serve themselves. And so they made that change. So now the developers have access to the object relational model in the
Mhm.
code, and they can make whatever changes they make. Boom, database is updated, and they're good. So yeah, Conway's law in practice.
In practice. So let me do a quick edit here. So it was Etsy who had the
Etsy,
transformation with Sprouter. It was LinkedIn who stopped all feature development and got rid of the 10 years of technical debt. So I wanted to make sure that we attributed each transformation
got it.
type to the right company. So yeah, I wanted to do that. So
Cool, cool.
yeah,
Yeah, good catch.
yeah. Um, what do we got next? Oh, this is something that I must, as an Eagles fan who's going to the Super Bowl on February 9th.
Fly, Eagles, fly.
Fly, Eagles, fly, baby. Go birds. There was a on page 105 in chapter 7. There's this really great analogy that the CTO at Ticketmaster, he had always said that, you have your ops team and they're
Mm,
your offense, and you have your excuse me, your ops team is your defense, your
mhm.
dev team is your offense. And he
Yeah,
said, I don't believe I was just saying that means they never play together. They're never on
yeah,
the field at the same time.
never.
And then he righted it using the same
Mm,
analogy where, this is all about the Eagles. So we got Jalen, we got Saquon, we got AJ Brown. They're the devs. They're the skill positions. They're out
mhm,
there making the moves. But on that field at the very same time, you got that O line. You got Jordan Malott. You got Lane Johnson. We used to have old boy that just retired, who's like the funniest Eagle ever.
mm,
But it makes sure as the dev has enough room to succeed,
mhm.
to have enough room to move the ball, to move the project forward. So that is a great analogy, liking it to a sports team, because
Yep.
all your players are on the field at the same time, and they should be working in concert and not at differing responsibility. So that's definitely a good quote that I take, and I'm internalizing it, that it's nice that we've moved past having separate teams, separate silos. We're all on the same team.
Yeah, indeed. And I can't recall if it's the same chapter
Mhm.
or not, if that was in chapter 8. Was that in chapter 7 or chapter
7.
8?
That was 7.
Or
Yes.
chapter 7. Okay, well, maybe I'm moving forward to chapter 8.
Okay.
Same analogy though, where the devs and the ops are on the same team, because I mean everybody's got the same goal, right? They want to have
Always.
the service available and up and running, making money, serving content, hearting and liking posts, whatever the goal of the platform is. Everybody
Exactly.
wants that to happen, right? But a lot of times what happens is, or in a lot of legacy organizations, or not even legacy organizations that don't use a pure DevOps approach, the
Mhm.
devs are throwing their code over the wall. They're saying, hey, ops, deploy this stuff and run it and handle it. It's yours now. And then the developers are kind of clean. They have never seen what it takes to deploy or operate their code. But it went into the book here, and I believe it's in chapter 8. They went into talking about developers deploying and operating their code in such a
Mhm.
way that they're responsible for their application in production. They're working with the operators,
Yes.
to learn how to deploy their code, learn what it takes to handle incidents and so on. But they're on call for that up front. So they feel the pressure of their app going down and having to
Skin in the
remediate that.
game.
Exactly. But as a result of that, now the developers are like, whoa, maybe I should, lint my code a little bit more. Maybe I should run a few more tests and catch
Mhm.
bugs like that. And as a result, you're going to have fewer incidents, because now, like you said, they got skin in the game. They
Yep.
don't want to be up at 3 a.m. logging into a system trying to figure out what went wrong, because they never had to worry about that before. But now they do. So
And also in chapter 8, so what you said was spot on. They have skin in the game, but what makes it possible is creating shared services to increase developer productivity. So
Hmm.
so the ops team building a platform that
Yes.
affords the dev team to be self-service and self-sufficient. That's a huge part of
Yes.
it, right? So if you want to enable these type of outcomes, you need a platform in which to afford your developers that. You don't want
Yes.
them coming to you for every 5 seconds, every 10 seconds, then you have to give them the tools to do exactly what they need to do. And there was a quote in here, and I wish I would have marked it, but there was someone who said that you don't want them to need you. You don't
Mm.
want you as a developer or as an ops person. I'm an ops person. You don't want the developers to want and need you. You want them to want and need your platform because that's where
Hmm.
they're delivering value. So we don't want to be blockers. We're enabling them to have more time building and testing. You got the whole platform. Knock yourself out, boo. Like we gave
Exactly.
it to you, and it's enabling them to do what they should be doing all along. So, and they say embed ops engineers into the service teams. And I think I mentioned that earlier, where maybe you need a dedicated ops person and a
Yeah.
person who knows networking, or have a team of generalists who can do the things that need doing to bring these features and these products and projects to life. Yeah, self service is the way, babe. You can't
Yeah.
be.
Indeed. And yeah, and I've got two comments on that. One, I mean, this was basically, if I think about when this book was released, it was a precursor to the term platform engineering. If you're thinking about the first edition of this book
Okay.
where they're talking about that, they were already saying, hey, you need this platform that runs your applications in a very common way. And I forget which company it was, but the example that they gave was a company that sort of base their code base on Scala. So they're like, hey, if you're using our platforms, all your apps have to be written in Scala.
Hmm.
They need to have these certain endpoints or whatever the case is. I think these
Opinionated
days,
platform.
yeah, yeah, opinionated platform. And I think in these days, you might say, use whatever language you want, but it's got to be containerized because our platform is going to be based on Kubernetes or some sort of
Mhm.
container orchestration system or whatever the case is. But the benefit of having the platform is if you teach those developers how to deploy, monitor, and operate using the platform, then they could probably deploy, operate, monitor any application that runs on that platform. And they know how to get in and debug and figure out the endpoints and the health of the application and so on. So yeah, standardizing on a platform, golden, golden,
Chef's
golden.
kiss.
Yeah, yeah,
Chef's kiss.
indeed. And I had another comment, and I think I lost it. Other than I do appreciate working with the developers that have an interest in learning how to operate
Yes.
things, because all too often, like I say, and developers, if you're listening, you guys are awesome. I love you. I appreciate you.
Yes.
I am far from a developer. I can script, I can code, but I can't make an application. Let's just talk
No,
about it.
no.
Um,
Shout out to all
so
my developer friends. I love
right,
you.
yes, indeed. But yeah, I appreciate developers that come over to the ops side in such a way where they're like, hey, show me how you're deploying this thing. And they learn the deployment method.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, hey, where are these logs written? How can I get some observability into this application? And they figure that out and are interested in actually learning more about the ops side of the whole thing.
And it goes both ways.
It does.
Goes both ways.
It,
We
oh,
have to be interested in what they're doing as well.
yeah. And to that point, that's how I learned a lot about Ruby on Rails because
Hello.
I got to a team where I was supporting Rails applications, and I'm like, I have no clue what I kind of know what Ruby is from Chef and Puppet and
Yep.
that type of stuff, but like, what is a Rails application? So, hey, developer friend, let me sit with you for a second. How do I do this Ruby on Rails thing? So yeah, I had to learn what they were actually building in a way that I had more insight when I'm actually deploying and operating it. Yeah.
Went both ways. It should go both ways. Two more
Yes,
things
indeed.
I want to mention in chapter 8. We're coming up on time. There's something that developers do. They have stand-ups and
Yes.
they're talking about what they're working on. And you should probably invite the ops team to your stand-ups because, again, if we're talking about embedding and understanding what each other is doing, that is a literal cheat code into
Mhm.
having a person with an ops mindset in your stand-ups, hearing what you're saying. They can bring value, they can bring clarity, if necessary. You don't want them in there disrupting, but it's
Mhm.
not a bad idea. Think about it. If you don't have any people from your ops team on your stand-ups, you should think about it. And as for ops people, we kind of work, we just mind our business and we do our thing and whatever, working on our tickets, but making your work visible. And I've never met an ops team, well, I have now, who uses a Kanban board to see
Yeah.
their work in progress. And I took it upon myself with all the stuff that I'm working on. I just put up on my little whiteboard, made my own little Kanban board. I got a work in progress
Yeah.
column, I got a test column, I got a done column. And my definition of done is I decide when it's done. Of course, it's usually with someone else's input or whatever, sign off. But um, embedding more parts of the team together and kind of loosening and lessening that friction is literally the way to have these transformations go much smoother. And then of course maintaining it going
Yeah.
forward. So that's all I have. I have nothing.
And I'm just going to piggyback on that. Thank you so much for bringing it up, because working with a development team that I was embedded in, that they had a Kanban board, they had their stand up. We had, and we, me and the ops team, we had our Kanban board, we had our stand ups, and we invited each other both ways. We were literally
I
one
like that.
team. We had our specialties. They're developing the application. We're building the infrastructure to help them deploy and operate these applications. But we knew what everybody was working on. And
Hmm.
because of that, we didn't have any roadblocks, because we talked about it before we even started working on it. And it was
Sounds
great. It's like, yeah, their deployment manager, or operations manager, he could look at our board and be like, oh man, okay, we've got these deployments lined up already, so we're not going to do any more deployments this week. Let's post this or push this out to the
transparency.
following week. Exactly. And then we're like, well, hey, we have this stuff coming down from corporate that we have to implement across the systems, so we're not going to do any deployments this week, or whatever. Or we could say, oh, we see you guys want to get this feature pushed by this certain date, so we're going to move this stuff around so that we can support you guys for that feature deployment. So it was great going to their stand-ups, knowing what they were working on and busy with, and not everybody came to our stand-up, but like at least one or two people from their team would join us.
They were interested.
And they would take that back to their team to say, hey, this is what they're working on. This is how we need to integrate with them. And having both of those boards together and merging those tickets, oh man, it was a beautiful thing.
Awesome. Well, that's it for part 2.
Yeah. And I have one note for part 3
Oh,
coming up
what is
next
it?
week. Part 3 is a deep dive into the first way, the technical practices of flow.
The
So now we
flow.
get into these ways of DevOps, which we
Mhm.
talked about last episode, and we get to take a little bit closer look at the first way, the practices of flow. So I need
Getting
to start
down and
reading. Yeah, I need to get into this one, so I can be ready to discuss it next week.
awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. Thanks for riding along with us. Again, we are reading the DevOps Handbook, second edition. This is where we are. We just completed our conversation about part 2. Next Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, we'll be talking about part 3, where they dig into the first way, the practices of flow. So read along, grab a copy, join us. You can catch the replay out there on YouTube. Uh, we would love to have you. And thank
Indeed.
you, Michael. I enjoyed you, man. This was a great conversation.
Always, Angela. Yes, I'm looking forward to digging into this next part of the book for sure.
Me too. Until next time.
All right, we'll see you.